Hey, welcome back and thanks for joining me. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I got home with desert sand still hiding in places it had no business being. Portland air felt wet and heavy after months of dry heat. My duffel bag hit the floor of my apartment with a thud that sounded louder than it should have. I took a shower, stared at my own face in the mirror like it belonged to someone else, and tried to remember what normal looked like. Normal apparently meant my parents throwing a party. Arthur and Beatrice Vance didn't do small. If there was a reason to celebrate, they treated it like an audition for a lifestyle magazine. My mom texted me 3 times before noon. Wear something nice. Don't be late. Smile. That last one made me laugh out loud in my empty kitchen. It came out dry like it had been rationed. By the time I pulled up to their place, the driveway was full of shiny cars that looked like they'd never seen a grocery store parking lot. Warm lights spilled from every window, music, laughter. The kind of people who say, "So good to see you," while scanning over your shoulder for someone more useful. I rang the bell. My mom opened the door and did that quick up and down look people pretend isn't happening. Her smile was tight practiced. "There she is," she said like she was introducing a product. "Cassie, you made it." "Traffic," I said. Which was true. Also, I didn't feel like explaining jet lag to a woman who thought sleep was a personality flaw. Inside, everything smelled like expensive candles and food that came with a story. A long table had been set up like a buffet for people who didn't know how to serve themselves. Someone had arranged flowers so aggressively they looked like they were trying to win an argument. The living room was packed, and right in the center of it, like the whole house had been built around her, was my sister, Sloane. She wore a white dress that wasn't bridal, but wanted you to think about weddings anyway. Her hair was done in that casual, perfect way that takes an hour and a half and a professional. She held a glass of champagne like she'd been born with it. When she saw me, her face lit up the way influencers light up for ring lights. "Cassie." She rushed over and hugged me with the energy of someone who wanted an audience. "You're back." I hugged her back because I wasn't here to start anything in the doorway. My heartbeat stayed steady. 65, I could have checked it on a watch. I didn't need one. She leaned back and looked at me like I'd been shipped from a warehouse. "Wow," she said. "You look tired." "I just got in," I said. "Yeah," she replied, still smiling. "Well, we all make choices." That's Sloane in one sentence. She could insult you and make you feel rude for noticing. Then she pulled me into the crowd like she was leading a parade. "Come on," she said. "You have to meet everyone." Everyone, it turned out, was a cluster of Julian's people. Tech guys in tailored jackets. Women with sharp nails and sharper laughs. A few older men who looked like they'd been investing since the invention of money. I heard phrases like growth scale and exit strategy floating through the air like confetti. Julian Thorne stood near the fireplace with 2 drinks in his hands, smiling like he owned the house. He didn't, but he carried himself like it was a temporary inconvenience. He was tall, clean-cut, expensive. The kind of man who used words like disrupt unironically and probably had a spreadsheet for his own emotions. Sloane guided me straight to him. "Babe," she said, sliding in close to Julian's side look, who finally made it. Julian's smile widened. He looked me over in a way that was quick, polite, and calculated. "Cassandra," he said. "Good to finally meet you in person." "Cassie," I corrected. He didn't flinch. "Of course." "Cassie." Sloane tilted her head, enjoying herself. "Julian's been dying to meet my big sister," she told the group gathering around us. "She does translation work for the military." Translation work. Not military intelligence, not classified operations, not the part where you spend months listening, watching, documenting, cross-checking, and making sure the wrong people don't get the right information. Just translation, like I was sitting at a desk converting instruction manuals from Arabic to English and complaining about font size. One of the men, maybe mid-40s, nodded at me like I was a helpful appliance. "That's a nice skill." Sloane laughed light and airy. "It's not as glamorous as it sounds," she said. "She's basically a glorified translator." She said it slowly, like she wanted the words to land clean. There it was, a few people chuckled politely. Julian chuckled too, half a beat late, like he was following a script. I could have corrected her. I could have said a lot of things. I could have made it uncomfortable. But I didn't. I just smiled because I understood something Sloane still didn't. People like my sister think the loudest person in the room is the strongest. They don't notice who's quiet and taking notes. Sloane kept talking. "I mean, don't get me wrong, it's cute," she said. "She's always been into languages. But now she's back and she's kind of transitioning, like I was a caterpillar she was waiting to outgrow. Julian nodded, sipping his drink. His eyes didn't leave my face. He wasn't laughing anymore, not fully. He was watching. That was my first real data point of the night. Arthur appeared behind us, clapping Julian on the shoulder. "There he is," my dad boomed. "The man of the hour." Julian grinned. "Happy to be here, Arthur." My dad turned to me like I'd just entered his line of sight. "Cassie, good, you're here." That was the full welcome. My father could deliver warmth the way a banker delivers loan terms. My mom floated over with a tray of appetizers and the look of someone managing a small crisis. "Cassie," she said softly, "go say hi to Aunt Lorraine before she leaves. You know how she gets." I didn't know how she got. I hadn't been around. But I nodded anyway because I wasn't here to argue with logistics. I slipped away from the circle. As I moved through the room, conversations brushed past me. Julian's new venture is going to be huge. Sloane's brand is taking off. They're such a power couple. My sister had built herself a stage, and everyone was happy to buy tickets. I found Aunt Lorraine did the small talk, accepted a too-tight hug, and made it back to the kitchen. That's where the real work was happening. My mom was directing like she was running a catering company, not hosting a celebration. She pointed at a stack of clean glasses like it was a moral issue. "Cassie," she said, lowering her voice, "can you help with drinks? We're running behind." I looked at her. "Behind on what? Just help," she snapped. Then she softened immediately because people were nearby. It would mean a lot. Meaning it would mean a lot if I did what I was told and didn't embarrass her. I grabbed a bottle of wine and started opening it. A few minutes later, Sloane swept into the kitchen, blowing, holding her phone at an angle that suggested she was filming or pretending not to film. She eyed me like she'd discovered a fun surprise. "Oh my God," she said loud enough for two women near the counter to hear, "you're already helping." "That's so on brand." I didn't look up. "Someone has to." Sloane picked up a tray of glasses and placed it in front of me like she was awarding me a prize. "Here," she said, "you can take these out. You're used to serving, right?" One of the women laughed. Not meanly, just reflexively, like the room had trained her to laugh when Sloane spoke. I set the bottle down and met my sister's eyes. Her smile was perfect. Her meaning wasn't. I took the tray. The glasses clinked softly as I walked back into the living room, weaving between suits and perfume and false warmth. People barely noticed me, and that was fine. Being invisible is useful. It gives you room to observe. Julian was across the room, leaning in close to a man with gray hair. His expression was friendly, but his shoulders were tight. His left hand kept adjusting his cuff like it itched. He caught my gaze for a second. Then he smiled again, and it didn't reach his eyes. I set the tray down near the bar area and started pouring. I didn't need to be the center of attention. I didn't need to defend myself in front of strangers who didn't matter. I just needed to be in the room long enough to learn what kind of man my sister married, and what kind of man my family had decided to worship. Right then, Sloane's voice rose above the noise again, bright, confident, aimed at an audience. "Everyone," she called, "come here. I want to show you something." People gathered. Phones came out. Julian moved to her side without hesitation, like he'd rehearsed it. I stayed where I was holding the bottle, watching. And if you've ever been treated like the least important person in the room right in front of your own family, what did you do next? Did you stay quiet and study the situation? Or did you call it out and let the whole room burn? Drop your answer in the comments. I set the wine bottle down and checked my phone before I walked out of that house. 3 missed calls from my mother. That was impressive. I had left their place less than 40 minutes earlier. I didn't call back right away. I drove home first. Portland traffic at night is slow but predictable. I like predictable. Brake lights, turn signals, lanes. Rules people mostly follow. Family works differently. When I finally called her back, she picked up on the first ring. "Cassie," my mother said, and I could hear the tightness in her throat. Not sadness, calculation. "You left so quickly. It was late." It wasn't even 10. For me, it was late. Silence. Then a shift in tone. "You embarrassed your sister." I leaned back against my kitchen counter and looked at the ceiling. By pouring wine. By being cold, she snapped. People noticed. People noticed I didn't clap loud enough for the circus. "I just got back from deployment," I said. "I'm adjusting," she exhaled sharply. "Everything is not about you." That sentence has been the family motto for as long as I can remember. When I was 17, I earned a full academic scholarship. Not partial, not needs-based, full. Tuition, housing, books. I had grades. I had recommendations. I had a plan. My father called it a nice opportunity. Sloan called it nerdy. The day the acceptance letter came in, my mom cried. I thought it was pride. It wasn't. It was relief. Because around that same time, Sloan had launched her first brand. A lifestyle blog that mostly featured filtered photos of coffee and captions about hustle. My parents funded it. Website design, photography, marketing campaigns, sponsored giveaways that weren't actually sponsored. It failed in under a year. Then came the second rebrand, then the third. Each one needed money, each one promised growth. One night, about a week before I was supposed to move into my dorm, my parents asked me to sit down at the dining table. That table has seen more negotiations than a law firm. Arthur folded his hands. Beatrice didn't look at me. There's been a complication, my father said. That word, complication, like we were discussing a delayed shipment. They explained that they had taken out short-term loans to support Sloan's marketing expansion. The return hadn't materialized yet. Payments were due. Interest was aggressive. My scholarship funds had already been dispersed to their joint account because I was 17 and legally convenient. We're going to borrow from it temporarily, my mom said quickly, just to stabilize things. Borrow. I remember doing the math in my head. Tuition, housing, books, fees. That's not borrowing, I said. That's all of it. It's family, my father replied. We support each other. What he meant was, we support Sloan. They promised they would make it right. They didn't. I joined the military instead. Not as a dramatic statement, as a financial solution. Training was simpler than family meetings. You show up, you perform, you earn your place. No one tells you you're too intense for wanting accountability. Years passed. Promotions, deployments, specialized training. I learned Arabic properly, not from an app, from immersion, from necessity. Sloan meanwhile evolved. Influencer, brand consultant, digital entrepreneur. Each title shinier than the last. Each one still funded quietly by my parents' revolving debt. Now she had Julian. And Julian had money. Or at least that's what the house, the cars, and the catered anniversary party suggested. My mother cleared her throat on the phone, pulling me back to the present. There's something we need to discuss, she said. Of course there is. What is it? It's about Sloan's car. I closed my eyes. It's 3 years old, my mom continued. And it doesn't reflect her current status. Her current status. She's building a brand, Cassie. Appearances matter. The right vehicle sends a message. I waited. She saw a new Range Rover, my mother said carefully. White, clean lines, very on-trend. And we think it would be appropriate for you to help. There it was. I just got back from overseas, I said evenly. Yes, and you received that transition stipend, didn't you? The discharge compensation. Compensation. Blood money and civilian packaging. That's for my housing, I said. You're renting a 1-bedroom apartment, she replied. You don't need much. I almost admired the efficiency. She needs the car, my mother pressed. Her current one looks dated in photos. Brands notice these things. Brands, I repeated. Don't be difficult, she said sharply. Your sister supported you emotionally while you were deployed. I actually laughed at that. Sloan posted one praying for you story, I said. With a sponsored candle. My mom ignored that. You've always been the practical one, she continued. You don't care about material things. That's how they justify taking from you. They redefine your priorities as permission. I'm not buying her a car, I said. Silence, then the shift. So you're refusing to help your own sister. I already helped, I replied. 4 years ago, remember? She didn't answer that. We ended the call without resolution, which meant she would escalate later. I set my phone down and opened my banking app out of habit. The numbers loaded. Then I frowned. There was a transfer I didn't recognize. Small, $2,000, labeled family support. I hadn't authorized it. I scrolled. Another one, 3 weeks earlier. 1,500. My jaw tightened, but my pulse didn't spike. 67 now, slight increase, still controlled. I logged into the full web portal on my laptop. Recent access history. There it was, a login from my parents' IP address, 2 days ago. I stared at the screen for a long moment. When I was younger, my mom had helped me set up that account. Back when I trusted her with passwords because I thought family meant firewall. Apparently she never logged out. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I changed the password. Then I enabled two-factor authentication. Then I called the bank's fraud department. Has anyone else been authorized on this account? I asked. The representative checked. There's a secondary contact listed. Beatrice Vance. Remove her, I said. Are you sure? Yes. While I was at it, I froze external transfers, restricted outgoing limits, set up transaction alerts for anything over $50. Data doesn't lie. Patterns do. My mother hadn't asked for the car yet when she moved money. She had already started taking it, probably telling herself it was temporary, that I owed them, that Sloan needed it more. I leaned back in my chair and looked around my apartment. Second-hand couch, functional table, no decorative candles telling a story. Everything in this room I paid for. Everything. For years, I told myself I didn't mind carrying more weight, that I was built for it, that Sloan needed the spotlight more than I did. But tonight, watching her introduce me as a glorified translator while holding a glass that cost more than my monthly utility bill, something shifted. Not anger, clarity, they weren't going to stop. So I would, quietly, starting with the money. I was halfway through reconfiguring my account alerts when someone knocked on my door, not a polite knock. 3 sharp hits, confident, impatient. I checked the time. 8:17 p.m. No one I liked showed up unannounced. I walked to the door without rushing. I didn't look through the peephole right away. I already had a guess. When I opened it, Sloan smiled like we had brunch plans. Surprised, she said, stepping forward before I invited her in. Julian stood behind her, hands in his coat pockets, scanning my hallway, like he was evaluating square footage. You live here? Sloan asked as she walked past me into the apartment. Yes. She looked around slowly. It's minimal. It's paid for. Julian gave a polite half-smile. We won't take much of your time. That was a lie. People who say that usually intend to. I closed the door. Sloan perched on the edge of my couch, like it might stain her dress. Julian stayed standing for a second, then chose the dining chair with the best angle of the room, his back to the wall. Good habit. So Sloan began clasping her hands together. We have something exciting to share. I didn't sit. Go ahead. Julian leaned forward slightly. I'm launching a new division under Thorn Technologies, logistics optimization for international markets. That sentence was designed to impress people who don't ask follow-up questions. And I said, and he continued smoothly. Given your background and your language skills, we thought it would be wise to formalize boundaries. Sloan nodded eagerly. It's just paperwork. Totally standard. Julian pulled a slim folder from his leather portfolio and slid it across my table. Non-disclosure agreement. I didn't touch it yet. You're not employed by us, Julian said. But you've been present at private conversations. At the house, at the party, you understand how sensitive business can be. I poured wine, I said. He smiled like I'd confirmed something amusing. It's just precautionary, Sloan added quickly. We don't want any misunderstandings, especially given your military connections. There it was again, the reduction, my career as a liability. I finally picked up the folder and flipped it open. The language was aggressive, broad. It didn't just restrict me from sharing information about his company. It restricted me from discussing any observations related to business operations partners or international transactions, past or future. That's wide, I said calmly. Julian shrugged. Our attorneys are thorough. I'd need my own attorney to review it. Sloan's smile tightened. Cassie, don't make this weird. I don't sign documents without review. Julian's eyes sharpened just slightly. Not anger, calculation. It's a formality, he said again. Unless there's a reason you're uncomfortable. There it was, the soft push. My pulse stayed steady. 68. I'm not uncomfortable, I replied. I'm careful. Sloan rolled her eyes. You always do this. Everything is a threat. Everything is classified. I closed the folder. I'll have someone look at it, I said. You'll hear from me. Julian didn't reach for it right away. He studied my face instead. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Then he stood. Excuse me, he said, already answering. He turned slightly away from us but didn't leave the room. He assumed privacy by posture. He answered in Arabic. Fluent, not tourist level, not textbook. Native. Sloan blinked. Since when does he speak Arabic? She whispered to me, impressed. I didn't answer. Julian spoke quickly. Low voice controlled. I kept my expression neutral, and focused on the table in front of me. But I listened. La mishkida. No, not like that. Pause. Al-shhana lazim titgayar el-masa. The shipment has to be changed to evening. Shipment. Fi mushkila fi el-mina. There's a problem at the port. Port. My breathing stayed even. He shifted tone. Firmer now. Ma fi shwara tu kida. There's no paperwork like that. Paperwork. El-ard el-jadid. Ma yitba thriach min henna. The new goods aren't sent from here. Goods. My mind wasn't translating word for word. It was mapping context. Shipment, port, paperwork, new goods, change timing. This wasn't software. This wasn't app development. This was logistics with risk. Julian paused listening. His jaw tightened slightly. La had yesa al kulotam. If anyone asks, everything is fine. That line wasn't corporate. It was operational. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket like nothing had happened. Sloane clapped lightly. That was hot, she said. I love when you do international stuff. He smiled at her, then looked at me. Apologies, he said. One of our Middle Eastern partners. I didn't know you spoke Arabic, I said casually. Picked it up, he replied. You know how it is. Yes, I know exactly how it is. You'd be surprised what you can learn when money's involved, he added lightly. That was an interesting choice of words. Sloane leaned toward me. See, you two have so much in common. Languages. Julian's gaze stayed on me a second longer than necessary. You understand a little, right? He asked. Enough to order coffee, I said. He nodded slowly. He believed that. Good, Sloane stood. Okay, we'll just sign it and send it back. We need to close this out before the next phase launches. What phase? I asked. She waved her hand. Investor rollout. Charity integration. Big things. Charity integration. Another data point. They moved toward the door. Julian paused before stepping out. I respect loyalty, he said quietly. In business and in family. Loyalty goes both ways, I replied. A flicker crossed his face. Gone in less than a second. They left. I locked the door. Then I stood in the center of my living room and replayed the call in my head. Shipment moved to evening. Problem at the port. No paperwork like that. New goods not sent from here. If anyone asks, everything is fine. That wasn't tech startup language. That was controlled cargo language. International, unregistered, possibly sanctioned. I walked to my laptop and opened a blank document. Date, time, summary of call. Exact phrases remembered. Memory fades. Documentation doesn't. Then I pulled up Julian Thorne's company profile. Thorne Technologies. Publicly listed services. Software optimization, supply chain, analytics, digital infrastructure. No mention of physical goods. No mention of ports. No mention of shipments. I checked federal contracting databases. Nothing significant. Yet he had investors. Cash flow, expensive taste. I leaned back in my chair. Either Julian was running the most profitable software company no one had heard of, or software wasn't the real product. And the NDA on my table suddenly made a lot more sense. They hadn't come for my signature. They'd come to see how much I understood. Now I had my answer. And so did he. I opened 3 databases before I poured my first cup of coffee. When something smells wrong, you don't argue with it. You verify it. Julian Thorne presented himself as a tech founder. So I started where tech founders leave fingerprints, corporate filings, import-export records, shell company registrations, nonprofit disclosures. I wasn't hacking anything. I didn't need to. Public records are generous if you know how to read them. Thorne Technologies existed. Clean website, clean branding, vague service descriptions. A lot of words about optimization, very few about deliverables. Then I searched subsidiary filings. That's where things get interesting. There were 3 LLCs tied loosely to Thorne through layered ownership structures, different states, different managers, all registered within 18 months. One of them handled logistics consulting, another handled international freight facilitation. The third was listed as a strategic sourcing intermediary. Intermediary. That word doesn't mean much until you attach cargo to it. I cross-referenced shipment data through publicly available port activity summaries. Certain ports in the Pacific Northwest have redacted entries for security reasons, but timing and frequency still tell a story. A pattern emerged. Every 6 to 8 weeks, a shipment under one of Julian's subsidiary names cleared through a mid-tier commercial dock. The listed goods were generic industrial components, agricultural equipment, mechanical parts. But the volume fluctuated in ways that didn't match the declared categories. Industrial components don't triple in weight randomly, unless they're not industrial components. I leaned back and reviewed everything again. Then I searched my own name. I didn't expect to find anything. I was wrong. On one of the LLC registration documents under Authorized Compliance Liaison, there it was. Cassandra Vance, my full legal name. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before scrolling down. There was a digital signature attached. Mine, except it wasn't. The formation date on that filing was 2 months ago. I was overseas at the time. I checked the metadata timestamp. Filed electronically from Oregon. My jaw tightened slightly, my pulse stayed controlled. 66. Someone had used my name as federal-facing insulation. If a shipment got flagged, if a compliance review triggered, my background would show up first. Military intelligence, language clearance, security training. I was the clean face, the firewall, without my consent. There was only one person who had access to my full legal signature template, my mother. When I was 17 and applying for student accounts, she insisted on keeping copies for safety. I never thought to ask for them back. I closed my laptop slowly. This wasn't careless, it was deliberate. The next text from Sloan arrived 30 minutes later. Hey, can you come by quick thing? Julian needs help translating something minor. Don't be dramatic. I almost declined. Instead, I put on a jacket and drove over. If they were using my name, I needed proximity. Their house looked the same as it had 3 nights ago. Polished, expensive, quiet. Sloan opened the door before I knocked. Oh, good, she said. I was worried you'd ghost us. I don't ghost, I replied. I document. She laughed like that was a joke. Julian was in his office. The room was deliberately masculine. Dark wood, minimal decor, 1 large desk, 2 monitors, a framed photo of him and Sloan at some tech conference where everyone wore badges like trophies. He stood when I walked in. Appreciate this, he said smoothly. Shouldn't take long. He handed me a printed document. Arabic text. Formal tone. I skimmed it. It wasn't minor. It referenced delivery adjustments, regulatory alignment, and component reclassification. It was structured like a supplier clarification memo. Where's this from? I asked. Partner overseas, Julian said. Which country does it matter? Yes, but I didn't push. I translated it cleanly. No embellishment, no corrections. Julian watched my face the entire time. When I finished, I set the paper down. That's it, I asked. For now, he replied. Sloan appeared in the doorway holding her phone. You're such a lifesaver, she said. See, this is what you're good at. I didn't answer. Julian gathered the pages and stacked them neatly. Sloan stepped into the room and dropped something onto the desk in front of me. Cash, loose bills, 10s and 20s. For your time, she said lightly. Can't have the glorified translator working for free. The word again. I looked at the money, then at her. My heart rate didn't spike. 68. You don't have to, I said evenly. Oh, I insist, she replied. We believe in compensating contractors. Contractor, that's what I was now. I slid the cash back toward her. I don't need it. She rolled her eyes and pushed it back harder, the bills scattering slightly. Don't be prideful, she said. It's not a deployment. Julian didn't intervene. He just watched. That told me everything. I let the bills sit there. Then I stood. Bathroom, I asked casually. Down the hall, Sloan said. I walked out of the office slowly. Instead of turning immediately, I paused at the hallway corner and listened. Muffled voices behind me, too low to catch words. I stepped into the bathroom, closed the door quietly, and pulled out my phone. I wasn't angry. Anger wastes oxygen. I was precise. When I returned to the office, Julian was typing something into his computer. Sloan had moved to the kitchen. The desk was still cluttered with documents, shipping manifests, routing tables, and one folder slightly open revealing a heading I recognized immediately. ITAR, International Traffic in Arms Regulations. That's not software. That's controlled defense-related material. I walked closer under the pretense of picking up my jacket. Everything good? Julian asked without looking up. Yeah, I said. My phone was already in my hand. I angled it slightly, pretending to check a notification. 1 photo, 2, 3. Close-ups of document headers, shipment IDs, regulatory codes. 1 page with a component classification that absolutely did not belong in civilian freight. Julian finally looked up. Something interesting, he asked. Just a text, I replied. He held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then he smiled again. Appreciate your help tonight, he said. I nodded. Sloane reappeared and handed me the cash again, like she was awarding a participation ribbon. Take it, she insisted. This time I picked it up. Not because I wanted it, because refusing it again would shift the tone. Thanks, I said. Her smile widened, satisfied. They thought this was still a hierarchy. They thought I was still playing the old role. On my way out, I glanced once more at the office door. ITAR documents on a private desk in a so-called tech founder's house. My name attached to compliance filings. Unregistered shipment fluctuations. Arabic coordination calls about port timing. The pattern was no longer theoretical, it was operational. I got into my car and sat there for a full minute before starting the engine. I didn't call anyone. Not yet. Data first. Then action, silently. I knew it was coming the moment my phone started vibrating nonstop before 7 a.m. Not calls, notifications, mentions, tags, direct messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't open anything right away. I made coffee first, sat down, breathed, 64 beats per minute, stable. Then I opened Instagram. Sloane had posted a photo of herself sitting on the edge of her bed, soft lighting, bare face, eyes slightly glossy. The caption was long. Sometimes loving someone means setting boundaries. When a family member comes back from war struggling and starts lashing out, you have to protect your peace. I kept reading. We've tried to support her PTSD journey privately, but now she's threatening our livelihood and spreading paranoia about my husband's business. There it was, PTSD, threatening, paranoia. She didn't name me. She didn't need to. The comments did it for her. Is this about your sister? So sad when veterans don't get the help they need. Protect your marriage. I closed the app. This wasn't emotional. It was strategic. If she could frame me as unstable, then anything I said about Julian would look like projection. Trauma, jealousy, classic preemptive discrediting. My phone rang. Arthur. I let it ring once more before answering. Morning, I said. What the hell are you doing? My father snapped. No greeting. Drinking coffee. Don't play games, he said. Your sister is in tears. She posted a monetized breakdown, I replied evenly. She seems functional. You've been threatening them, he continued, accusing Julian of crimes, telling people he's dangerous. I haven't told anyone anything. Then why does she believe you're trying to destroy her marriage? Because she knows I'm not blind. But I didn't say that. I asked questions, I said, about documents with my name on them. Silence. Then my mother's voice joined in. Speakerphone. You don't understand how business works, she said quickly. Julian is building something important. You can't just storm in with your military mindset. I didn't storm in, I said. They came to my apartment. That's not the point, Arthur cut in. The point is this stops now. I waited. You are going to sign a power of attorney, he said. There it was for what I asked calmly, for management of any military-related benefits or assets, he replied. We need to ensure nothing you say or do jeopardizes our family financially. Our family. You want control of my accounts, I said. We want stability, my mother corrected. You already accessed my account without permission, I said. Silence again. That was a misunderstanding, she said quickly. It was logged. Arthur exhaled sharply. Listen carefully, Cassandra. If you refuse to cooperate, we will have no choice but to distance ourselves completely. Distance, meaning disown. You're already doing that, I said. No, my mother said. We're offering you protection. Protection from what? The truth. If you don't sign, Arthur continued, you are no longer welcome in this family. We will make that clear publicly. There it was. The threat. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not sadness. Alignment. I'm not signing anything, I said. Then don't call us again, he replied. He hung up. I stared at the wall for a moment. Then I opened my laptop. If they wanted paperwork, I could provide paperwork. I contacted the legal assistance office assigned to veterans in my district. Not dramatic, routine. I scheduled a same-day consult. By 2 p.m., I was sitting across from a military attorney in a small office that smelled like printer ink and old carpet. I laid everything out. The unauthorized account access, the forged compliance listing, the pressure to sign power of attorney. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back and folded his hands. Do not sign anything, he said. I won't. We'll draft a formal notice. Cease and desist regarding financial interference, clarification of unauthorized representation, and a warning regarding potential fraud exposure. Good. He typed while I watched. The letter was clean, dry, direct. It stated that any further attempt to access my financial accounts would result in formal fraud investigation. It demanded immediate removal of my name from any corporate filings. It notified them that misuse of a veteran's identity for regulatory shielding carried federal consequences. No emotion, no accusations, just law, by 4:30 p.m. It was sent via certified email and physical copy. Arthur called within 20 minutes. How dare you involve attorneys, he demanded. You told me to sign legal documents, I replied. This is legal. You're threatening your own parents. I'm protecting myself. You have no idea what you're doing, he snapped. Actually, I did. He lowered his voice. Do you understand what kind of attention this brings? Yes, that was the point. In the background, I could hear my mother pacing. You've embarrassed us, she said. Julian is furious. That's not my concern. You're sick, she added quietly. This isn't you. This is trauma talking. There it was again. PTSD weaponized. My medical records are confidential, I said evenly, and you are not my physician. Arthur went silent for a beat. Then he said something he rarely says. This could ruin us. I let that sit. If everything is legitimate, I replied. There's nothing to ruin. He didn't answer. He just hung up. An hour later, Sloane posted again. Praying for clarity and healing, she wrote. Sometimes boundaries mean letting go. The comments flooded in with support. She was winning the narrative, for now. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't defend myself online. People who understand evidence don't argue in comment sections. That night, I reviewed the photos I took in Julian's office. Zoomed in, shipment codes, regulatory classifications. One page had a component listed under Category 4, missile systems and launch equipment. That's not a branding campaign. That's federal prison. I closed the folder and leaned back. They thought the smear would pressure me into silence. Instead, it clarified their fear. If they were this aggressive about controlling the story, then the story mattered. And if my father sounded scared, it wasn't because I embarrassed him. It was because he finally understood what kind of exposure they were standing next to. Sloane could keep the sympathy. I would keep the documentation. I blocked their numbers before I brushed my teeth the next morning. Not dramatic, not emotional, just clean. Arthur, Beatrice, Sloane, blocked. I archived old message threads, removed shared photo access, updated emergency contacts, changed beneficiary designations on every account that still had family names attached. No contact isn't loud, it's administrative. Then I made one call that actually mattered. CID. You don't call them casually. You don't open with conspiracy theories. You present data. I need to report potential misuse of my identity in connection with federally regulated shipments, I said. That got attention. Within 48 hours, I was sitting in a plain office with 2 agents who didn't waste time on small talk. I brought everything. Corporate filings with my name listed as compliance liaison. Screenshots of unauthorized banking access. Photographs of ITAR classified documents on Julian's desk. Notes from the Arabic call. Shipment pattern analysis. One of the agents flipped through the printed copies slowly. You documented the timestamps yourself, he asked. Yes. You have any direct access to their internal systems? Number good. He looked at his partner. This is structured, he said quietly. Not paranoia. Not PTSD structured. They didn't tell me much after that. They didn't need to. I signed a statement. Agreed to remain available. Agreed not to confront the subjects directly. Agreed to maintain distance. Distance was easy. I'd already built it. Weeks passed. Silence from my family. Silence from Julian. Online Sloane's narrative shifted from wounded sister to resilient entrepreneur. Then came the announcement. A charity gala, black tie, 5-star hotel in downtown Portland. Auction, private investors. Launch of a new global impact fund focused on infrastructure development in emerging markets. I read the post twice. Infrastructure development, emerging markets, Middle East, of course. The venue was the most expensive hotel in the city. Crystal chandeliers, valet parking, tickets priced high enough to signal exclusivity without inviting scrutiny. A week before the event, one of the CID agents called. "Are you aware of the gala next Saturday?" he asked. "Yes. Would you be willing to attend?" "I'm not invited." There was a pause. "That can be arranged." 2 days later, an email arrived. From Sloan, subject line Olive Branch. I almost laughed. "Hi Cassie," it began. "Despite everything, I believe in family. We would love for you to attend our charity gala. There will be an important guest from Dubai who prefers Arabic. Julian thought of you immediately. It would mean so much if you could help us that night." Of course he did. A special guest from Dubai. Real-time interpretation required. That meant live negotiation, sensitive conversation, likely involving the shipment adjustments I had already documented. I forwarded the email to CID. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Accept," the agent said. "Understood." So I did. I responded politely. Professional tone, no emotion. "I'd be happy to assist." Sloan replied within minutes. "See, I knew you'd come around. Dress code is formal. Don't be late." That Saturday, I stood in front of my closet and chose the simplest black dress I owned. No sequins, no statement jewelry, clean lines. Invisible is useful. The hotel lobby was already buzzing when I arrived. Men in tailored tuxedos, women in structured gowns, staff moving like clockwork, champagne trays floating through conversations about philanthropy. I checked in under my own name. The event banner displayed the fund's title in gold letters. Underneath it, Building Tomorrow. I scanned the room slowly. Julian stood near the stage, shaking hands with 2 men I didn't recognize. Sloan moved between clusters of guests like she was conducting energy. They looked confident. Relaxed. Too relaxed. Julian spotted me first. A flicker crossed his face. Not surprise. Assessment. He walked over with that same measured smile. "Cassie," he said, "I appreciate this." "I'm here to translate," I replied. He nodded. "That's all we need." Sloan joined us, air kissing near my cheek without touching. "I'm so glad you decided not to sabotage us," she said lightly. "I don't sabotage," I replied. "I clarify." She laughed, assuming it was sarcasm. "It's a big night," she said. "Investors, international partners, media. That meant optics mattered more than substance. "Where's the guest from Dubai?" I asked. "He arrives shortly," Julian said. "Private entrance." Of course. I let my eyes move across the ballroom again. Security presence was subtle but heavier than a typical charity event. A few men in suits who didn't engage with drinks, earpieces, calm posture. CID doesn't wear uniforms. The auction began. Art pieces, luxury trips, signed memorabilia, paddles raised, applause, laughter. Money moved quickly in rooms like this. Then the doors near the side entrance opened. 2 men entered. One older, composed, dressed in a tailored dark suit. One younger, quiet, carrying a slim briefcase. Julian's posture shifted instantly, focused, intent. "That's him," he said quietly. Sloan squeezed his arm. "This is it." Julian turned to me. "Stay close," he instructed. We moved toward the guest. Introductions were exchanged in English first, polite, measured. Then the older man switched to Arabic, fluent, formal, business tone. Julian responded in Arabic as well. I stood slightly behind them as requested. The conversation began light, then it narrowed. Regarding the revised routing schedule, customs documentation must align with the new classification. Delays at the port cannot happen again. Port, classification, delays. Same vocabulary, same structure. Julian hesitated slightly on one phrase. He looked at me. "Translate," he said quietly. He thought I was still ornamental. The older man continued speaking in Arabic, this time more direct. "The components cannot be inspected under standard review. They must pass through the alternative channel, not standard review, not inspected." My pulse remained steady. Behind the guest near the far column, I noticed one of the security men adjust his cuff slightly. Signal. Julian leaned closer to me. "What did he say?" he whispered. I met his eyes. For the first time, he didn't look confident. He looked exposed. And that was exactly where I needed him. I held Julian's gaze for half a second longer than necessary, then translated exactly what the guest had said. "He's concerned about inspection protocols," I said calmly. "He wants confirmation that the shipment won't pass through standard review." Julian nodded slowly, masking the tension in his jaw. In Arabic, he said, "Of course." I turned to the guest and delivered a clean, neutral translation of Julian's response. No extra tone, no editorializing. The guest listened, expression unreadable. From across the ballroom, the music swelled slightly as the auction transitioned into its final segment. A spotlight flickered near the stage. Sloane's voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention?" Applause followed automatically. People love being told they're part of something important. Julian gave the guest a small apologetic nod. "We'll continue in a moment," he said in English. Sloane stood center stage, glowing under controlled lighting. The hotel staff had dimmed the room just enough to create focus, without losing luxury. "I just want to thank each of you," she began, voice warm and practiced. "Tonight isn't just about business, it's about impact." Polite applause. She gestured toward Julian. "My husband has worked tirelessly to build partnerships that stretch across borders." More applause. Then her eyes found me. "And speaking of borders," she said with a soft laugh, "we actually have someone very special here tonight. Here we go." She stepped down from the stage and walked toward me, heels precise against marble flooring. Conversations quieted as she reached my side. Without asking, she took my wrist lightly and guided me forward. The movement looked affectionate. It wasn't. She led me onto the stage. 200 faces turned toward us, phones lifted slightly, recording. I stood beside her under the lights. The fabric of my black dress absorbed attention instead of reflecting it. "Exactly as intended. This," Sloane announced brightly, "is my big sister, Cassandra." A few polite nods from the crowd. "She just returned from overseas service," Sloane continued. "We're all very proud." Applause scattered politely. I kept my posture straight. Neutral expression, breathing steady. "But what most of you don't know," she added, tightening her grip on my wrist just slightly, "is that she's helping us tonight." Her smile widened. "She's our translator." Light laughter in the audience. "She's always had a talent for languages," Sloane continued. "And while some people think military experience makes them important..." Pause. She turned toward me. "The truth is, no matter how far you travel, sometimes you still end up serving drinks at your little sister's party." More laughter now. Louder, she leaned closer to the microphone. "You see," she said, projecting clearly, "even if she went to war in the end, she's still serving my success." There it was, the line she'd been waiting to deliver. The room reacted the way rooms do when humiliation is wrapped in humor. Uneasy laughter, some applause, a few tight smiles. I scanned the crowd once. Julian stood near the guest from Dubai. His smile was fixed, not fully relaxed. Good. My pulse remained steady. 65. Sloane released my wrist. "Isn't that right, Cassie?" she asked sweetly. I looked at her, then at the audience. "I translate accurately," I said simply. A few people chuckled, unsure how to process that. Sloane laughed louder to reclaim the rhythm. "That's my sister," she said. "Efficient as always." She motioned toward the bar. "Why don't you get back to work?" she added softly. But the microphone still caught it. Work. I stepped off the stage without arguing. Arguing would have been emotional. Data collection requires calm. Back on the ballroom floor, I positioned myself near Julian and the guest again. The older man resumed speaking in Arabic immediately. His tone had sharpened. "There is a discrepancy in the serial documentation. The crate numbers do not align with the declared mechanical parts. This cannot be traced back to us." Serial documentation, crate numbers, mechanical parts as declared cover. Julian responded quickly, but his grammar slipped slightly. A native speaker would catch it. The guest did. He corrected him mid-sentence. Julian glanced at me again. "Translate," he said more sharply this time. I did, word for word. The guest's concern was clear. The most recent shipment had inconsistencies. Documentation didn't match physical inventory coding. If inspected under proper ITAR classification, it would trigger federal review. Julian's voice lowered. "It will be rerouted before inspection." Rerouted? Through alternative customs channel. Alternative channel again. I translated cleanly. The guest looked unconvinced. He spoke faster now. "If this fails, we are all exposed." Exposed? Julian's jaw tightened. He turned to me abruptly. "Hey," he said under his breath. "Glorified translator." The phrase hit the air between us. Tell him the delay was due to port congestion. Nothing more. He thought I would adjust tone, smooth it, protect him. I didn't. I translated exactly what he said. The guest's eyes narrowed. He responded immediately. "This is not congestion. This is incompetence." I delivered that line in English without softening it. Julian's composure flickered. Around us, the ballroom noise continued. Auction paddles, glasses clinking, laughter. But within our small circle, the air had shifted. Julian stepped closer to me. What else did he say? He demanded quietly. He's questioning your control over the shipment process, I replied evenly. Then fix it, Julian snapped. I don't manage your logistics, I said. His nostrils flared slightly. For the first time since I met him, he looked like someone operating without a script. The guest leaned in again and spoke in a lower, deliberate tone. The inspection risk increases every day. If authorities are alerted, there will be no recovery. Authorities, no recovery, I translated. Julian swallowed once. Behind the guest, I noticed the same man near the column adjust his cuff again. Subtle, coordinated. Another man near the exit shifted his stance slightly. Positioning. Julian leaned closer to me, voice tight. What exactly did he mean by authorities, he asked. He meant authorities, I replied. He stared at me, searching my face for something: fear, hesitation, loyalty. He didn't find it. On stage, Sloane's voice rose again as the final auction item closed. Tonight is just the beginning, she declared brightly. Yes, it was. Julian was still staring at me when the guest from Dubai spoke again. His tone had changed. Less negotiation, more warning. If there is interference, we withdraw immediately. Interference. Julian didn't translate this time. He just looked at me. Well, he demanded quietly. What did he say? I didn't answer right away. Around us, the ballroom noise continued. Applause near the stage. A violinist warming up for the closing segment. Servers moving between tables with practiced smiles. But inside our small circle, everything had narrowed. The guest shifted his gaze between Julian and me. He understood something was off. Julian leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. Translate, he repeated. I looked at him directly. For months he had watched me like I was ornamental, manageable, useful but secondary. He thought I only knew enough Arabic to make him look global. He thought I didn't understand logistics language. He thought I didn't understand risk. He was wrong. Instead of translating the guest's last sentence, I spoke first. In Arabic. Clear, precise, no accent hesitation. Al-Wukala Mawjudun Huna. 4 words. The agents are here. Not might be, not could be, are. Julian froze. It wasn't dramatic. It was mechanical. His body simply stopped responding for a fraction of a second. The guest's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Julian blinked once. What he said in English. I repeated it in Arabic slower this time. Al-Wukala Mawjudun Huna. The guest's posture shifted immediately. He stepped back half an inch. Julian's hand tightened around his champagne glass. You're joking, he said quietly. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I don't joke about federal operations, I replied in English. That's when it clicked for him. Not just the words, the structure, the timing, the documentation discrepancies. The hesitation I never showed. His face drained slightly. The glass slipped from his hand. It hit the marble floor and shattered sharp and loud enough to cut through the music. Several heads turned. Julian didn't look down at the glass. He looked at me. You, he started. Then he scanned the room. Really scanned it this time. Not like a host checking attendance. Like a man looking for exits. The 2 men near the column had shifted closer. Subtle but closer. Another pair near the main doors had straightened slightly. Earpieces visible now if you knew to look. The guest from Dubai took 1 slow step backward. What have you done? Julian whispered. I kept my voice even. I translated. His breathing had changed. Slightly faster now. You set me up, he said. No, I replied. You built this. On stage, Sloane was still speaking about transparency and global impact. The irony was almost efficient. Julian turned toward the guest and began speaking rapidly in Arabic. It's nothing, just noise. We can move now. Move now. Run. The guest didn't respond. He was looking past Julian. So was I. The first agent approached calmly from the left. Julian Thorne, he said in a controlled voice. Julian didn't answer. 2 more agents moved in from the right and behind. The music cut abruptly. That wasn't an accident. Mr. Thorne, the first agent repeated louder now. We need you to step away from the guest and place your hands where we can see them. The room fell into stunned silence. Sloane's voice stopped mid-sentence on stage. What is this? She demanded into the microphone. No one answered her. Julian took 1 small step backward. I don't know what this is about, he said, raising his hand slowly. International trafficking of controlled defense components, the agent replied calmly. Fraudulent compliance filings. Sanctions violations. The words landed clean. No exaggeration, just charges. Sloane had stepped off the stage and was pushing through the crowd. "This is a mistake," she said loudly. "My husband runs a tech company." One of the agents addressed her without looking flustered. "Ma'am, please remain where you are." Julian's eyes found mine again. "You think this makes you powerful?" he asked quietly. "No," I said. "It makes you accountable." The guest from Dubai was already being separated and questioned by another pair of agents. Hotel security stood frozen near the walls, unsure whether to intervene or disappear. Guests pulled out their phones, but several agents were already instructing them to lower them. "Step forward," the lead agent ordered Julian. Julian hesitated for half a second too long. That was enough. They moved him gently but firmly. Hands secured. No theatrics, no shouting. Professional. Sloane reached him just as the cuffs clicked. "You can't do this," she shouted. "Do you know who we are?" "Yes," the agent replied calmly. "We do." Her eyes swung toward me. "You did this," she said, her voice sharp and high. "You're sick. You're obsessed. You couldn't stand seeing us succeed." I met her gaze without raising my voice. "I stood in the room," I said. "You built the rest." Julian was being escorted toward the exit now. He didn't look at Sloane. He looked at me, not with anger, with calculation collapsing. He understood now that I hadn't just overheard one phone call. I knew about the shipment reroutes, the port coordinates, the ITAR classifications, the forged compliance listing with my name attached. He knew I had documentation. He knew I had handed it over. And he knew this night, the charity gala, the investor launched the Global Impact Fund, had been mapped long before the first champagne glass was poured. As they led him past me, he leaned slightly closer. "You were never just a translator," he said quietly. No, I wasn't. The ballroom was chaos now, guests whispering, phones buzzing, staff scrambling. Sloane stood in the center of it, dressed still, perfect expression unraveling. "This isn't over," she said to me through clenched teeth. I didn't argue, because she was right. It wasn't. I didn't go home right away after they led Julian out. I stayed in the ballroom until the noise settled into something manageable. Agents moved with quiet efficiency. Guests were escorted out in controlled groups. Statements were taken. Phones were confiscated from a few people who tried to be heroes for social media. Sloane stood near the stage like someone waiting for the lights to come back on. They didn't. Within 48 hours, the headlines shifted. Not gossip blogs, real outlets. Portland tech founder arrested in federal arms trafficking investigation. International shipment network under review. The charges weren't vague. Illegal export of controlled defense components. Fraudulent compliance representation. Conspiracy to bypass federal inspection protocols. There was also a word my father had always said belonged to history books, not his family. Treason-adjacent conduct. Julian's assets were frozen immediately. Accounts locked. Properties flagged. And because my parents had leveraged their home as collateral for one of his expansion loans, the house followed. Arthur called me once, not to apologize, to ask if I knew how bad this was. Yes, I said. The bank moved fast. They always do when the collateral turns radioactive. My parents lost the house within months, not dramatically, not with police tape and news vans, just paperwork. Default, seizure, auction. 15 years of mortgage payments reduced to a line item in a federal recovery process. Sloane wasn't arrested immediately. She was investigated. Aiding and abetting, financial misrepresentation, obstruction. Her accounts were reviewed. Her influencer contracts evaporated one by one. Brands do not partner with federal investigations. Her follower count dropped faster than her sponsorship revenue. Silence is loud online. 3 months after the gala, someone knocked on my door. Soft this time. I checked the peephole. Sloane. No makeup, no camera, no white dress engineered for lighting, just Sloane. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "What do you want?" I asked. Her eyes were red, not from crying for an audience, from actual exhaustion. They took everything she said. "Yes, you could have warned me." I held her gaze. "I did." She shook her head. "Not like this. Not federal agents at my event." "It wasn't your event," I said calmly. "It was evidence." She flinched slightly. "You destroyed us," she whispered. "No," I replied. "Julian did. You just stood next to him." She swallowed hard. "We lost the house," she said. I know, Mom and Dad are staying with Aunt Lorraine. I didn't comment. She took a shaky breath. I didn't know it was weapons, she said quickly. I thought it was tech. Logistics. Maybe some gray areas, but not that. Gray areas. Serial numbers don't accidentally mislabel missile components. You signed documents, I said. I trusted my husband. I trusted my family once. That landed. She looked past me into my apartment. You're just going to let us drown, she asked. I stepped back slightly, not to let her in, but to grab something from the small table near the wall. A folder. I had prepared it weeks ago, not for revenge, for clarity. I handed it to her. What's this? She asked. Open it. She flipped it open slowly. Inside was a printed spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, transfers, tuition funds diverted, scholarship reimbursements never returned, bank withdrawals labeled family support, unauthorized transfers from my account, interest estimates, 15 years of financial redirection. At the bottom, a total, adjusted for inflation. She stared at it. This isn't real, she said. It's documented. Her eyes scanned the pages again. That was for the family, she insisted weakly. No, I said evenly. It was for you. Tears slid down her face. You're keeping score. I'm keeping records. She closed the folder slowly. What do you want? She asked. I don't want anything. Then why give me this? So you understand the difference between help and exploitation. She looked at me like she wanted me to hug her. I didn't move. I don't have anywhere to go, she said. Yes, you do, I replied. You just don't like the options. She let out a small bitter laugh. You really think you're better than us now? I shook my head. I think I'm separate. That's different. She stood there for a few seconds longer, searching my face for something she used to recognize. She didn't find it. Finally, she nodded once. If you ever decide to forgive us, she said quietly. I don't operate on forgiveness, I interrupted gently. I operate on boundaries. She left without slamming the door. That was new. The federal case moved forward slowly the way serious cases do. Some assets were liquidated, some were seized. Because my name had been used without consent in compliance filings, I qualified for restitution. I didn't celebrate it. I redirected it. 6 months later, I filed paperwork for a nonprofit foundation. Not flashy, no gala, no champagne towers, just a scholarship fund for female service members transitioning out of active duty, specifically those who lost educational funding due to family interference or financial exploitation. I knew that category intimately. The first check went out to a 19-year-old who wanted to study engineering and whose parents thought she should stay local and help. I met her once, briefly. She didn't know my full story. She didn't need to. The foundation grew slowly, carefully. Transparent accounting. Clear mission, no alternative channels. People asked me later if I felt vindicated. That's not the right word. Vindication is emotional. This was structural. Julian built a network on secrecy and manipulation. I built one on documentation and access. Sloan sent one message months later. No accusations this time, just a short sentence. I understand now. I didn't respond. Understanding doesn't require conversation. If you were in my position, if your own family dismissed you as just a translator, used your name to shield illegal operations, and tried to silence you with shame, would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace, or would you have done exactly what I did? Tell me what you think. And if you believe silence can be a strategy, not weakness. Subscribe for more stories about boundaries, accountability, and choosing clarity over chaos. I didn't defend myself online. That decision bothered more people than the arrest did. After the gala, I watched the comment sections shift from sympathy for Sloan to outrage at Julian. People tagged me, asked for statements, invited me onto podcasts. Some wanted a survivor story. Others wanted a takedown speech. I declined all of it. Not because I was scared, because I understood timing. There's a misconception in this country that if you're innocent, you should shout. That if you're right, you should go live. That if someone lies about you, the only solution is immediate public correction. That's emotional reflex, not strategy. When Sloan posted that I had PTSD and was threatening the family, she wasn't trying to diagnose me. She was building insulation. If I reacted publicly, she could say, see, she's unstable. If I went silent, she could say, see, she's ashamed. Either way, she controlled the narrative, unless I refused to play. Here's something I learned in intelligence work. The loudest voice in the room is rarely the one in control. The one in control is the one gathering information. Silence is not surrender, it's data collection. When someone tries to discredit you before you speak, that's not random. That's preemptive narrative control. It's common in corporate fraud. It's common in family manipulation. It's common anywhere ego meets exposure. Step 1, reduce your credibility. Step 2, isolate you emotionally. Step 3, frame your reaction as instability. Step 4, escalate pressure privately. It's predictable. Sloan called me a glorified translator before I ever challenged Julian's documents. That wasn't a joke. That was positioning. If I was small, then anything I accused them of would sound dramatic. Then came the financial pressure. Power of attorney, access to my accounts, for stability. Then the public smear, PTSD, paranoia. Then the ultimatum from my parents. Notice the order. It wasn't chaotic. It was structured. If I had gone online and defended myself emotionally, I would have validated their framing. Instead, I documented everything. People underestimate documentation because it's boring. It doesn't feel powerful in the moment. It doesn't give you adrenaline. It doesn't win arguments at dinner tables. But it wins in rooms with consequences. Documentation beats emotion every time. If someone lies about you at work, save the email. If someone pressures you to sign something, request it in writing. If someone accesses your account, screenshot the login history. If someone threatens you verbally, follow up with a neutral message summarizing the conversation. You don't fight chaos with louder chaos. You fight it with records. Another thing people misunderstand is boundaries. Boundaries are not dramatic speeches. They are logistical changes. I didn't announce no contact. I changed passwords. I blocked numbers. I removed shared access. I updated beneficiary forms. I stopped explaining myself. That's what a real boundary looks like, not a paragraph. A system change. If someone has already violated your trust, you don't negotiate them back into good behavior. You restrict access. Access is privilege. When my parents demanded control over my military benefits for the family, they weren't asking for support. They were asking for leverage. And leverage is dangerous in the wrong hands. Here's a rule I wish more people understood. If your name is on a document, your liability is real. If your signature is forged, your risk is real. If your silence protects someone else's wrongdoing, your exposure is real. Family does not override federal law. And guilt does not override responsibility. There's also something else I want to address. Reputation. For 3 weeks, Sloan controlled the online narrative. She was the grieving sister, the supportive wife, the victim of a traumatized veteran. If you only watch social media, you would have believed her. That's because reputation in the short term belongs to the loudest storyteller. Reputation in the long term belongs to the documented truth. When the charges were filed, no one remembered her caption about protecting her peace. They remembered the words illegal export and federal investigation. Short-term sympathy evaporates under long-term evidence. If someone is attacking your reputation, ask yourself one question. Do I want to win this week, or do I want to win permanently? Permanent wins are quieter. Silence also gives you psychological control. When you react immediately, you hand over emotional leverage. The other person can calibrate their strategy based on your response. They know what triggers you. They know how far they can push. When you don't react, they have to guess. Uncertainty destabilizes manipulators. Julian didn't panic when I argued with him. He panicked when I didn't. He expected defensiveness. He expected outrage. He expected ego. He didn't expect stillness. Stillness forces people to confront their own exposure. There's a difference between silence born from fear and silence chosen as discipline. Fear-based silence shrinks you. Strategic silence sharpens you. I wasn't silent because I felt small. I was silent because I was building a case. And here's the part that might make some people uncomfortable. Not everyone deserves your explanation. You can love someone and still refuse to justify yourself to them. You can walk away without performing closure. You can protect yourself without narrating the process. Closure is a luxury. Safety is a necessity. If someone in your life constantly frames you as too sensitive, too intense, or unstable, when you question inconsistencies, don't internalize it immediately. Step back and examine the pattern. Are you reacting emotionally, or are they reacting defensively? There's a difference. Another hard truth. People who depend on illusion will attack clarity. Julian depended on illusion. Sloan depended on perception. My parents depended on denial. Clarity threatened all three. So they attack the source of clarity, me. That's not unique to my story. It happens in businesses, in marriages, in families, in friend groups. If you are the one who asks for documentation, transparency, or accountability, you will often be labeled difficult before you're labeled correct. Get comfortable with that. Because difficult is temporary, correct lasts. I don't believe silence is always the answer. There are moments that require direct confrontation. There are situations that demand immediate reporting. But silence, when chosen intentionally, can be a weapon. It creates space for evidence to accumulate. It prevents escalation from clouding your judgment. It protects you from saying something you'll later have to defend instead of retract. If someone needs you loud, it's usually because they're afraid of what you'll prove quietly. So here's what I'll leave you with. Before you react to the next accusation, pause. Before you defend yourself online, document offline. Before you argue with someone committed to misunderstanding, you ask yourself, what outcome do I actually want? Attention or resolution? You don't win by matching volume. You win by controlling exposure. Silence is not weakness, it's leverage. If I could sit across from my 17-year-old self at that dining room table, I wouldn't tell her to fight harder. I'd tell her to read the paperwork. That night is still clear in my head. The scholarship letter sitting open, my parents explaining temporary borrowing, the word family used like a moral override. Back then I believed something simple: if you love people, you sacrifice for them. What I didn't understand was this. Love without boundaries becomes leverage. When my parents used my scholarship money to cover Sloan's failed marketing campaigns, they didn't frame it as theft. They framed it as unity, support, shared vision. Your sister just needs momentum. It's for all of us. You're strong. You'll land on your feet. That's how exploitation often sounds. Not cruel, not aggressive, just reasonable enough to make you doubt your own discomfort. If I could talk to that younger version of me, I'd say this. When someone asks you to sacrifice your future to stabilize their present, pause. Ask questions. Where is the money going? What is the repayment timeline? Is there documentation? If the answer is, don't you trust us? That's not proof of integrity. That's pressure. Here's another thing I'd explain to her. Financial literacy is self-defense. I spent years learning languages, signals, intelligence analysis. But the skill that ultimately protected me wasn't Arabic. It wasn't surveillance training. It was understanding contracts. Power of attorney is not symbolic. Collateral is not theoretical. If your name is attached to something, your liability is real. When my parents tried to get me to sign over control of my military benefits, they wrapped it in concern. We just want to manage things responsibly. What they wanted was access to leverage. If I could go back, I'd tell myself to treat every signature like a deployment order. Read it, understand it, question it. Because here's the truth, most families don't teach. You can love people and still require paperwork. You can support someone and still refuse shared debt. You can care about family and still protect your credit score. Those things are not mutually exclusive. Another lesson I learned too late. Don't confuse charisma with competence. Julian was articulate, confident, global. He spoke in polished sentences about infrastructure and optimization. He made investors feel intelligent. He made Sloan feel important. But competence isn't how smooth someone sounds in a ballroom. Competence is compliance. Competence is sustainable structure. Competence is transparency that survives scrutiny. Charisma collapses under audit. If someone dazzles you but resists documentation, that's not sophistication. That's exposure risk. And Sloan, my sister, wasn't evil. She was addicted to perception. She built a life on being admired. When reality threatened that image, she chose defense of the image over defense of the truth. That's a dangerous trade. If I could sit across from my younger self, I'd say this too. You are not required to shrink so someone else can shine. For years, I let Sloan take the spotlight because I didn't want competition. I told myself I was above it, that I didn't need validation. But shrinking to keep peace is still self-erasure. You don't have to compete, but you also don't have to disappear. Another hard truth I had to accept: family loyalty without accountability becomes permission. When my parents dismissed my concerns about Julian's filings, they weren't protecting him. They were protecting the illusion of stability, the illusion that their daughter had married up, the illusion that their sacrifices had paid off. Denial feels safer than correction in the short term, but correction prevents collapse. If I could talk to my 17-year-old self, I'd warn her about guilt. Guilt is powerful currency in families. You're ungrateful. You're cold. You've changed. Those phrases aren't feedback. They're tools. They're designed to redirect you from facts back into emotion. Emotion is easier to manipulate. Facts are harder to erase. Here's something else I'd say. You are allowed to walk away. Walking away doesn't mean you stop loving someone. It means you stop absorbing damage for them. When I went no contact, people called me harsh, dramatic, unforgiving. But distance gave me clarity. It gave me safety. It gave me the space to act without interference. Forgiveness is internal. Access is external. You can forgive someone and still refuse to let them into your financial accounts. You can forgive someone and still decline to answer their calls. Those are separate decisions. And finally, I'd tell her this: redirect the pain into structure. The restitution money I received wasn't revenge. It was recovery, and I could have kept it all, invested it, expanded my own comfort. Instead, I built the scholarship foundation, not because I wanted to prove anything to my family, because I understood what it feels like to lose educational opportunity due to someone else's financial recklessness. Power isn't just stopping harm, it's building alternatives. Every scholarship check that goes out is a quiet correction, a redistribution of opportunity, a way of saying your future is not collateral. If I could look that younger version of me in the eye, sitting at that dining table while adults explained why her scholarship needed to be temporarily redirected, I'd say this: they will call you difficult. They will call you rigid. They will say you take things too seriously. Stay precise. Precision is not coldness, it's clarity. And clarity is protection. Knowledge builds leverage. Boundaries protect it. Silence deploys it. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be prepared.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.